when I was working the storefront at Sanity. The most pressure I ever got was to sell more copies of the Ministry of Sound Clubber's Guide. Welcome back to episode 93 of This Week in E-Commerce. I am Mal Chia, back with you for another week with Alex Ross.
Hello.
Alex, how are you?
I'm well, Mal. How are you?
I'm doing really good. It was a nice, quiet, relaxing weekend. So I feel refreshed for the week ahead.
We love those.
Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, look similar. Went to the footy on Saturday, Adelaide Oval. Paid $31 for 2 Stone Wood watered down beers, but gladly to sit in the sun.
Yeah, although not to see Port lose.
Yes, well, there's that, with terrible accuracy as well, to be honest.
It was horrendous. Like,
It was nearly amusing. There was no Amarty party, that was for sure.
No, we were definitely missing Aaliyah.
Yes. Would have been interesting to see how he goes up against this old team, though.
Yes. And how was last week for you? You were all over the place. You had a lot of webinars on, I see.
I was, yes. I had 2 webinars. What was it, Wednesday and Thursday morning? Just really quick 15-minute rapid fire, all about the Athos Commerce and Intelligent Reach platforms. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. The recording should be out on YouTube hopefully soon.
Fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more about that.
Yeah, it was great chat.
And last week I mentioned to you that I was waiting for the end of financial year sales to see what the deals would be. I have finally made my first EOFY purchase.
Well done. What'd you get?
I got this Panzera watch.
Nice.
So, yeah. So Panzera is, full disclosure, one of my clients. They're currently running their end of financial year sale. And I thought it's about time I graduated to a grown-up's watch.
Yes. Yeah. So have you had your eye on this one for a while?
I have. I've had a Apple Watch for like the last 4 or 5 years, and I was just finding I was just getting so distracted, like all the time. I'd be talking to my wife, I'd be talking to anyone, and you hear the little ding, you look up, and it's just like it just takes you out of the flow.
Totally.
So I thought about it, I just need to remove more distractions from my life, and I thought the best way to do it is to get a proper watch, which does nothing but tell the time and apparently where true north is. So I not only just have a really nice looking proper adult's watch, but I also can find true north anywhere I am around the world.
It will throw you into some orienteering then, should we?
Fantastic. I look forward to hopefully not getting too lost in the woods somewhere. Well, we've got a lot to cover off today, including Amazon's Prime Day, which is going to be coming up really soon, an update on Optus's backlash from some dodgy conduct they had from about a year or so ago, and a couple of acquisitions, some fairly big acquisitions as well from DigiDirect and Freedom, and finally going to be talking about founder content. So kicking off into Prime Day. Amazon are doing it again, this time going from July the 8th to the 11th. So they're actually doubling the length of time for Prime Day now. So from 2 days now to 4 days. And what caught my eye about it was LeBron James stars in their ad. And I thought it was a really cool ad.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I think it was marketed to exactly you.
Well, that's what advertising is, right? It just knows how to target people through the creative. And that one found me.
Yep, 100%. Using LeBron James, like what a grab.
Yeah. And then Prime Day last year, they did $14.2 billion USD, and they're expecting that to increase again this year. So last year was a 12% increase. This year, they're predicting another 12% increase. And they're also showing that 80% of Prime members say they're going to shop this year compared to 68% last year. What do you think is going on, Alex?
Look, I think it's a compelling story to get on marketplaces, right? Like to get on Amazon, to make sure that you're making the most of those eyeballs. They're impressive stats, particularly with 80% returning again, like that guaranteed traffic during those 4 days. Things exciting.
Yeah, I think it's a good move as well. Like in Australia anyway, like getting outside the end of financial year sale where you're kind of getting lost in a lot of the messaging which is out there.
Yes, yeah, it's easier to focus your energy on one site rather than the whole of the internet. I think that's what everybody struggles with during Black Friday, right? It's just there's so much content, there's so many different offers sent to you. So keeping it all on Amazon for Prime Day is really smart.
Yeah, and outside the that period, and are you going to be looking at Prime Day? Like, are you a frequent Amazon shopper? I know Paul was like a massive Amazon shopper.
That's what I was going to ask you. I have overseas, but not in Australia. Um, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll be one of the newer shoppers this year.
Look, I think for me, like I am a big Amazon shopper, mainly for things which are fairly commoditized, like something which I can just get it anywhere. I'll just get it from Amazon. So something which I would normally go to, let's say, a Target or a David Jones or something like that for. Do you know what? It's on Amazon. I'll just grab it there instead. Just the convenience. You just cannot beat that convenience. And that's, I got to say, probably why Amazon have been doing so well, because they just figure out ways just to give you back the thing which you want most in life, which is time.
Yeah, 100%. And further to that, I see TikTok influencers where they'll have their own Amazon storefronts. So it's a really great way for that, oh, this is what I bought when I got a puppy. These are all the things. You go to their Amazon storefront, they've tagged all the products you could possibly need. So seeing a lot of influencers at the moment really talk about that Amazon storefront piece, obviously getting a commission from any, shops from their storefront URL as well.
Well, affiliates is big marketing. It's big business affiliates now, especially like when you've got all these celebrity influencers who can just put up their Amazon storefront.
Yeah. Have you heard of the cucumber salad guy on TikTok?
I have not.
He makes salads out of cucumbers, lots of different types of recipes that all look amazing, but it's all to do with the mandolin. So when you're kind of, using the mandolin, there was a TikTok about it, about how much money he made from the referral of mandolins, because he was getting millions of likes per video, right? So this man would have made a good bank just from referrals to Amazon storefront for
Mandolins.
mandolins.
Do you know
Yeah.
what? I am actually in the market for a new mandolin. My mandolin is terrible, so I think I might have to look this up.
And they've got the matching containers for different sizes. So yeah, it's a huge market.
And there are many businesses out there who just rely 100% on affiliate marketing. I know we talk a lot about Meta ads, Google ads, and all that good stuff, but there are some businesses who are multi-million dollar brands just selling purely using affiliates. They have a product, they just reach out, put it out onto like TikTok Shop or things like that, get thousands of creators to start talking about their product, and they can sell hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight.
Yep. And then linking that into loyalty programs as
Mhm.
well. So getting points for, I don't know, a TikTok video where you've got them linked in the caption, for example, then you get a free product and then your network gets more from there.
All right, I'm going to be looking out for this the cucumber salad guy on
Yeah, I'll
TikTok.
have to send it to you after. He's hilarious. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but he's quite popular.
All right, I'll look that up. All right, we're going to move on to Optus now. Last year, Optus got in a lot of trouble, and this made the news all over the place, where they were found to have sold phones and plans to vulnerable Australians, in particular disabled, elderly, and Indigenous Australians, where in some cases they were selling them products they didn't need, but also services which weren't actually available where they lived. And what actually made it worse was that they actually got debt collectors involved, because these people were unable to actually pay their bills. So the Optus would then get debt collectors involved to go chase these guys. And now it's come back to bite Optus on the bum, and they are now being fined $100 million.
Yeah, look, I don't know what the right amount is for kind of punishment to that behavior, but it's pretty disgusting. I have read a lot about it. I would love to know who put the pressure on their sales team to take those types of measures, and how, what's the right word, like through the establishment it truly is. I haven't seen much mention of like true accountability other than, looking at things, making changes, but there's no true accountability in this story.
Yeah, I think the old saying, the fish rots from the head. And while it may have just been one store which did it, and I believe it was just one store in particular, and the people who were involved have all been fired, the fact is that they felt empowered to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I was thinking about this as well. What was that particular store's sales target? What pressure were they under
Hmm.
to kind of hit those? And I'd love to know or dive into kind of how do those targets for stores change in different economic locations? Particularly, from what I understand, this was a store where there was a lot of home to a lot of First Nations Australians from regional and remote locations nearby. So, how does that impact the expectations of the sales in that store.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something which we need to take into account. Like depending where you are, you need to have different targets based on that. And even when it comes to like online retail as well, understanding the nuances between different communities, different countries, and adjusting for that.
Yeah, and the different, the different offers, different products, what's more localized to that spot and adjusting the bottom line for it.
Mm. Yeah, I remember back in my days in retail, when I was working the storefront at Sanity, the most pressure I ever got was to sell more copies of the Ministry of Sound Clubber's Guide.
Oh, and that mustn't have been difficult. What an absolute track.
I mean, the worst thing for me was the fact that we had to play it so often. So Friday night shopping, we just crank it the whole time. And after like 2 or 3 weeks of this, you were just completely sick of it. Everyone's coming in. This is amazing. This movie is so good. It's like, I want to kill myself. I've heard
Yeah,
this 5 times today.
yeah. I don't want to hear Calvin Harris anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Bounce. I remember that album well.
Yeah, there were so many of them. I believe they're still going, I think. And although this is a total aside, they've got the Ministry of Sound. They've got the orchestra one.
Yes, and another aside, they've actually got a club in Europe, and I think in London as well. That's like Ministry of Sound.
Yeah, nice. I think that was the where it all stemmed from.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we're going to move into some acquisitions now. And there's been quite a few big acquisitions. And then you brought this on my radar. Where, first of all, we're going to talk about DigiDirect. Now, DigiDirect last year, DigiDirect, they sell, they're a marketplace for tech products. Last year, they acquired Booktopia. So very famously brought Booktopia out of administration. And now they've made another move by acquiring M-Wave. And this is actually their third acquisition of the last 12 months. Now, M-Wave, I've known about M-Wave for like 19, 20 years.
Yes.
Being a bit of a tech guy myself, and building many different PCs, etc. over the years. This took me by surprise. I didn't realize that M-Wave were in trouble in the first place.
Yeah, I think this took me by surprise as well. It just seems to be impressive growth on the part of DigiDirect. A lot of big news to them recently. Big brands. I don't know how much, like you said, how much M-Wave was struggling, but they must have been.
Mm. Look, and it's a big acquisition. It's a big acquisition because M-Wave is a very well-known brand, and they're also very aligned as well. You've got this consumer electronics retailer DigiDirect, and now they're merging. Well, they're acquiring and absorbing M-Wave, who are known for creating some pretty good products themselves. So it seems to be a really good alignment there between the two different business models.
Yep, 100%. And the biggest opportunity I see for this, right, is just that cross sell. You've got the same consumer, just purchasing more of different types of products.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is from DigiDirect's view. It's a way to be able to buy a distressed asset like M-Wave and be able to consolidate those operations because you've got the alignment there as well. Like you say, it's the same customer. So you get a lot of efficiencies there, and it just makes a hell of a lot of sense. In the same way, I guess, that the other merger from this week is AMART acquiring Freedom. And AMART, who are actually private equity owned, they're owned by Quadrant Private Equity, have bought Freedom to create a $1 billion portfolio with over 120 stores. Does this one also make as much sense?
Is the 1 billion combined AMART and Freedom? Is there other brands in the group?
I think it's just AMART and Freedom from what I can read.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I thought you'd have a bit to say about this one when I saw this this pop up, just off the back of what we've seen happen with Mosaic, right? Look, I think it depends on how they structure things. The Freedom team that I've met, amazing. They're fantastic. So if they can exist as two different teams, maybe business units, to really keep that brand integrity rather than kind of having that true merger of both brand team structure.
Yeah. And look, and you brought up Mosaic, and this is my question around this, particularly when private equity is involved. I've been talking with a couple of people over the last week about private equity and the way they operate. Ultimately, private equity, they are in it to turn it over. They want to acquire, they want to grow it to a certain valuation, and they're going to flip it again. That's how they make their money. They've got to exit at a certain point. What I like about the DigiDirect one, in contrast, is that that's privately owned. Right, DigiDirect, it's just a private entity which is purchasing it and acquiring, growing it, and you can see how that may potentially grow. Similar-ish to Kogan as well. Whereas in this case, because the private equity back, similarly to what Mosaic Brands did, was that when Mosaic Brands started acquiring a lot of these other fashion retailers, they consolidated and actually made things worse as
Mm.
well by consolidating and changing a lot of how the businesses operated in terms of like changing their DNA, their soul, and what they ultimately stood for. And in the case of Mosaic Brands, one thing which I read the other week was that the other day, I should say, they've potentially been trading insolvent for the last year at least, which was quite remarkable. But also from reading the interview with some of their suppliers as well, who were effectively the brokers who were then working with the factories back in China. They were saying that they used to be paid on 30-day terms when they were working with the original businesses. As soon as Mosaic took them over, those terms sometimes extended out to 120 days or 300 days in some cases, which is just a crazy amount of time, but also shows like the cash flow issues which a company like Mosaic would have to go, to do this, because you're trying to fuel this growth, through purchasing a lot of stock, hoping to be able to sell it and then pay it back. But when you're extending your terms out to that amount, you really need to question, like, is this business model sustainable? And ultimately, I don't think it is. So I hope that's not the same thing which is going to happen with AMART and Freedom as well.
Yeah, I think like just from that summary you went through, Mosaic, it sounds like they consolidated probably too literally. Freedom, AMART, they've got both great brand equity in themselves, hoping that they maintain that through this. And I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Look, when I think of Freedom and I think of AMART, I do think of them at two different ends of the scale as well, where AMART is very much that lower cost, entry level sort of product. Whereas Freedom, to me anyway, Freedom's always been a little bit more elevated than that. It's still not like super premium or luxury, but it's definitely at a different, part of the market.
Yeah, 100%. And from the Mile and Toemakers Centre, my local, where it's got all of the big brands, even just that store experience is exactly the same as you've just explained, right? So AMART versus Freedom, the Freedom experience is a lot more lush, particularly when it comes to the product as well.
Yep, I remember in the 90s being able to go to a Freedom store. They'd have the little cafe there. You could
Yes.
go and make yourself like a hot chocolate as a kid. I like my mum loved going there, and I loved going there because they had like a little mini playground and the hot chocolates.
Great strategy.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and we are now going to move into our final story of the week, which comes from a podcast which you got me onto, Shameless.
Yes, yeah. This story makes me happy. I was excited to share this with you. I love Shameless. Michelle Andrews, Zara McDonald, their whole network. They're great, Melbourne based. So whilst binging over the weekend, I came across an interesting take from, I think it was one of their May podcasts, so not that frequently, about kind of how everyone's building in public when it comes to new brands, right? And the risks and benefits of having a person behind that brand. So, or more like, that kind of like face of the brand. So what did you think of it, Mal?
Well, it's definitely true in the sense that it's really hard to build a brand now without a face, because purely from a brand strategy point of view, one of the most distinctive brand assets which you have is actually a face of the brand. And that's why founder content works so well. And it's really important to put that out there. Otherwise, you are essentially just a faceless brand. So with all the brands I work with, I highly encourage all of them to be comfortable going out there, creating content, putting a face to the brand, putting some personality to it, and really humanizing what it is about. Because otherwise, you're just a commodity. You're just another product which could be imported from Alibaba or Temu or wherever it is. That face becomes so important.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur or anybody getting into business, though, doesn't it just double the stakes? So not only have you got your money, your time, um, everything that you've put into this business, you've now got your identity publicly associated with this.
Absolutely, I think that's you're right. Like, you have to be vulnerable, and some people aren't open for that. But you can see how that has also allowed some brands to be incredibly successful. Whether
Yes.
you go back like a few years ago, Simon Beard, but also currently, Tara from Proud Poppy, Anita Saker. There's so many people out there who are putting their face behind it and telling that story and bringing their customers along for the journey. I know that with some of the brands I work with, like G'd Up, Jake is integral to that brand story of who they are. That's why people buy the brand, because they identify with him. They feel like they're part of that journey.
Totally.
But there was an interesting point, though, that was suggesting that for female founders, perhaps female founders shouldn't do it, which I also thought was interesting, that you do need to have really thick skin. But the ones who I think do it best are actually the female founders, because they can actually be vulnerable, at least more vulnerable and authentic than I think than guys.
Totally. I think it's just at what cost, and the cost is in this case, having thick skin and just being able to separate between those two and know what you're doing this for. It's definitely a really impressive way to scale. We've seen a lot of businesses do it for sure.
There's also the question about burnout as well, which they raised in the podcast, around like when you're living your life and building your business in public. Like you said, the stakes are higher. There's this added pressure. And there was also a really interesting point which they raised around actually making thoughtful decisions rather than just reacting, where there was a feeling that because you were building this business in public, there was this pressure to like make decisions really, really quickly rather than actually being much more thoughtful around that.
Yeah. I think they tied that to just the how quickly we're taking in content at the moment and just flicking between apps, flicking through content, making these quick decisions, and not kind of detaching yourself from that kind of TikTok world, and all of those followers and everything there. It's interesting as well from those like creative people where they were never set to run a business or don't want to run the business, but it's, part of a necessary evil for them. So kind of when that you do get that successful, what's that point of handing it over?
And if you even can hand it over, because your brand is so intrinsically tied to it. Like there's another brand, Midday Squares in the US, chocolate brand, where throughout their entire existence, they've really built this brand online. They create a hell of a lot of content which shows this family about how their goal is to build this billion-dollar chocolate brand. And the family is heavily, heavily involved in all the content because it is, for all intents and purposes, a family business. But when it gets to that point and they sell it, because I think that's ultimately their goal, is the family still going to be involved? What does it transition to next? And does it lose that piece of its soul? And you can see that with streetwear brands, where streetwear brands like Supreme, for instance, Supreme have like lost like $1.5 billion in value, in the last, couple of years since they sold to LVMH. Because the soul's gone out of the brand, because they've gone from being something which is about the culture which they've built to now being this mass market product.
Yeah, that we see at discount racks at those big stores later in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, and that just kills all the brand equity which you've built up. So that's probably a discussion for another time. Like, is there a need to be like really, really big, or I think when you get big, you lose part of that. You lose part of that soul, and you see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Any founders who you think are doing it quite well?
I love the Lad Collective. Are you familiar with them? The Sheets, amazing brand, growing really quickly. That accessibility piece, great high quality product, and local. I think they're Queensland based, Gold Coast even.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the Loose and Glow guys do a really good job as well, creating content.
Yes, their content's great. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
But you see their founders for both the Lad Collective and Loose and Globe. You see their founders in the videos most times.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, one story we're just going to quickly touch on before we wrap, because I know we're running out of time here, is Satire. So Satire, the marketplace reseller for luxury fashion, they would take in unsold excess inventory from European luxury fashion and sell it into the US. They peaked a couple of years ago. They were all over retail media at $1.8 billion valuation, just a massive amount. They've now shed 97% of their market cap and are only worth $100 million now, because it seems they're hemorrhaging a lot of money. In particular, it looks like their operating cash has dropped from $45 million to $30 million in a quarter, and they are fast running out of money. And they blame this on the tariffs. So it seems that I think the luxury sector may be going through some challenges as well.
Yeah, I don't know how much, is the mathing here? I think that, yes, I loved how they called it the disruptor in chief, US President Donald Trump. I think, yes, he definitely has a big impact, but that seems like a lot of a huge drop, 97% drop off 15-20% tariffs.
Yeah, they were going down already anyway because I think they were massively overvalued at
Yes,
that
that's
time.
what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think at their peak, they were definitely overvalued. I wish I'd bought much earlier.
Yeah.
But now it's like they're probably roughly where they should be. But it just seems that the way how quickly they've dropped, but also the fact that they're losing cash so much as well, really speaks to the fact that they never really had a sustainable business model in
Yes.
the first place.
Or they how dynamic, how quick are they to move. We've seen big businesses in Australia change considerable plans for these tariffs and kind of finding creative ways to overcome this and maintain profit margins as much as possible. They're just obviously struggling to move as quickly.
Yep. All right, Alex, that's all we got time for this week. What are you looking forward to this week?
This week, I am looking forward to getting my webinar recordings up on YouTube. I'll put them out on LinkedIn and hopefully have some great conversations from there. What about you, Mel?
This week, I'm looking forward to the end of financial year sales. Doing a lot of planning at the moment for FY26. I have to finish budgets for a lot of clients at the moment. Yes, that's right. We're going to be getting our budgets in right before the end of financial year, I hope, and then getting ready for peak. So a lot going on from next week as we roll towards end of financial year. Not end of financial year, to Black Friday.
Friday. All feels like one at this point.
That's right. All right. That's what we've got time for. In the meantime, keep innovating, keep growing, and keep selling, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks. Bye, Mel.